Welcome everyone to Beyond Borders, where we decode the EB5 investor journey for families across the Gulf, Turkey, and Central Asia. This is Ayça Apak. I'm joined by Marko Issever. He's the EB5 expert, broker-dealer, and trusted advisor to hundreds of investors worldwide. Marko, so welcome and with you.
Thank you for having me on your program. I'm delighted, and I hope it will be helpful for all your listeners. Thank you very much.
It will be very helpful because there's a lot of questions around, and I've been gathering the questions. I'm going to start firing them one by one. But I want to start with the basics, okay? What is the EB5 program and why is it generating renewed interest in this year, especially after the new president of the United States of America?
Yeah, a little bit history here probably would help. EB5 started now, I would say 30 years ago. 25 years ago. So hold on, my math, 35 years ago, to 1990. It started with direct EB5. Which basically means that investors would start a business here and employ 10 or more Americans, or at least people who have work permits. The reason why is because 1990, especially that year, we had enormous unemployment in this country. And the Congress, in their infinite wisdom, came up with this program and say, why don't we open up the borders to foreigners? They come in, invest money. With that money, we can create jobs, and they get a green card, they get a citizenship, and we, solve this unemployment situation. It was a great program, a great idea, but the problem is that with a $500,000 for targeted employment area programs or $1 million for urban programs, it wasn't enough to create the 10 jobs that they wanted for 2 years. It was just not possible to do it, plus make money. So a couple of years later, in 1992, more like 93, I think, they came up with the regional center program as an extension. And they said that now we will pool all the investors together. They will invest through an expert at the regional center who can work with the developer or who can work with any business owner. This way, their money will be leveraged. So let's say that they make an EB5 investment. That EB5 investment gets augmented by a bank loan on the top, meaning on the waterfall. And then the developer or the project owner puts some money as equity on the bottom. So now you have 3 layers of financing: the senior loan, the EB5, and the equity. This really helped it because obviously the bank doesn't need the jobs. The equity, the developer doesn't need the job. The jobs are, the investor needs the jobs. So what I say is a typical deal, an average deal, I always say, the 60% senior debt, 20% EB5, and a 20% equity. This is an average deal. It doesn't mean that there's such a law or anything. But just as an example, you can see that every dollar that the investor is putting is becoming $5. So that $5, obviously, you can employ more people for a longer time. So that's the EB5. Now, it was really a Chinese kind of a program. The Chinese lawyers, the Chinese investors, it was just like only open. It seems like it was like a well-kept secret. Me working in Wall Street for so many years, never heard about EB5 back.
You've been there for 30 years, haven't you? You're a veteran of financial matters.
Longer, but at any rate, and not only me, all my friends, I've asked, when I got into this business about 10 years ago, I started polling people, and nobody knew.
Because I know that I'm just being very mindful of the people who are listening in, but who are not very familiar with the jargon, with the financial rhetoric in a sense. So when you say senior debt, or maybe when we have all these layers that you've just mentioned, that actually acts in favor of the investor, right? So it's adding a layer of security in a sense for the investor. Am I being correct in thinking that, right?
It's a great question. It's one of the questions that I love, because there are really 2 kinds of deals. One where you have a bank, one where you don't have a bank. The reason why, what you mentioned is good for the investor is because now you have a bank. albeit it's senior to you, meaning they will be paid before you're going to be paid as an EB5 investors, it always gives me comfort because somebody, very experienced has looked at this transaction, has analyzed it, and decided to put their money into the deal.
Exactly.
Right. So now the critics will say, well, you have somebody above you, they are going to be paid before you. So how come that makes you comfortable? I say that I'm going to use some jargon, but I'm going to try to explain what I mean. So if the loan to value ratio for a senior lender, a reputable senior lender, is, I say, 60%, I don't mind my investor to go in with a 70%. So what that means is that if they have $1 backing their 60 cents, if you will, that they put into the deal, I will gladly tell my investor, put 70 cents. Well, they're not going to put 70 cents, they're putting 10 cents, but they're going to put the 10 cents behind the 60 cents, meaning there's 70 cents of exposure against that dollar. So that makes me more comfortable. Now, the critics will say, why? You could have your 70 cents or your 80 cents be backed by $1, and then there's nobody above you. For a long time, up until the interest rates were this high, I never took that argument. I always basically just discarded it. And I said, if there's no senior loan, I'm not putting my money, my investors' money into this transaction. I've kind of changed religion, Aicha, a little bit. And the reason is because EB5, compared with the senior loan, which is above you, is quite cost effective for the developer. So it's a big thing for them to have a senior loan paying essentially more money, have a type of financing below it, which is supposed to be, if it's more risky, let's say, because first you're going to pay this one, the top senior loan, then the EB5 should be, at least equal or higher. It's significantly more cost effective. So it came to a point where now, if you look at our portfolio, we have a mixture. We have deals where it's a senior loan transactions, which is senior loan, EB5, and equity. But we also have what we call senior position deals, which means that there is no senior loan, but there is EB5 at the senior position and equity. Now, what do we do in order to compensate for the fact that there is no senior loan? There is not this buffer. Security, this buffer, this security by the bank that is not willing to put their money to the transaction. We ask for more equity. We basically substitute the security we get out of the senior loan being there by asking more skin in the game, another jargon. Skin in the game, meaning that we want the developer to put more equity. So now we have deals where
put the money where their mouths are.
right. So our investors and the developers, interests are aligned. So that, so now we're looking at more like 50-50. 50% senior loan, senior position, EB5, and 50% equity from the developer.
Okay, I have a question then. Say I'm potentially interested in EB5, and I come to you and I ask for your opinion, for your advice. Clearly, you can still be an EB5 investor without having to go through these projects and just go solo, I presume. Am I correct in assuming?
Direct EB5. We touched about it in the history.
But we're basically just trying to establish that there's a better way. If you were to sort of summarize that better way and the why it is better, what would you say to our potential listeners who are thinking about going down the EB5 road?
Right. Another excellent question. So the better way, the other way, the alternative way is the regional center model. In the regional center model, you are not trying to kill two birds with one stone. That's the way I explain it. You're trying to basically achieve your green card goal. When you go the direct way, meaning you say, you know what, I have my money, I'm just going to invest my money, I'm going to make whatever money I'm going to make out of my money, and by the way, I'm going to get a green card. The main problems are like this. First of all, in the United States, to be able to employ 10 jobs, 10 people full-time for 2 years, putting $800,000 or even $1 million is not enough. You couldn't even pay the salaries for those 10 people, let alone make any money. Secondly, most of our investors don't really live here. they live abroad. They're going to come here. They don't know the system here. So as soon as they come here to open up a business and risk this much money so that they can, enjoy money.
All the while
What-
trying to get used
the
to the
green card. So
system, to the legal framework and this and that. Yeah, I hear you.
while you're trying to kill two birds with one stone, you're going to kill no birds with that stone.
And less headache, I presume.
Yeah. So, but on the other hand, I mean, I want to say this before we jump into the regional center. I want to say this: if a person already has a very established, a factory or huge business overseas where they are from, and they want to open up a ranch here, and they say, "Hey, Marko, forget the $1 million. I got to invest 25. I got to invest 10, $25 million. 10 people? What are you talking about? I need to hire 50 people."
Yeah.
So when when the situation is where the investment amount is not dictated by the immigration, by USCIS or the law, but it is just a genuine need of the business. And obviously, it's way more than the $1 million that we're talking about here. And the 10 jobs is organically needed to accomplish what they want to accomplish. And they have the expertise. So when all of that comes together, by all means, we'll help.
By all means.
By all means. But you will see just from the statistics, I mean, 97% of the market is regional centers. So that says it all. That means that people are just picking the other route. It's easier. At the end of the day, if you can prove your source of funds, that could be the next thing we'll discuss. The source of funds, all you really have to do, write the check for the amount, for the investment and all the fees, that are sort of associated with this. And then just let the job creation, the employment thing, and the project, running the project, all of the professional aspects of the business, let it to be done by the professionals. So those are, I think, the main things. And we have plenty of choices. We have rural projects, we have urban TA projects, we have projects where the developer and regional center sister companies, we have others where they're Chinese wall between the regional center and the developer. We have a huge menu of available alternatives. So I'm not going to say, our investments are risk-free. In fact, that would be, not even correct, because by law, the money has to be at risk. But, we do quite a bit rigorous when,
due diligence, I would say. Yes, you're the due
And
diligence expert since I've known you. Okay, look, with my journalist hat, I always look at, when I'm trying to dig deep, I look at the 5 W's, I call them, the who, the what, the why, the where, and the when. So we talked about the what. I want to bring you to the why. Why EB5? And then we're going to talk about who is suitable for this kind of investment. Because having known you since, when did we meet? Like almost 10 years ago.
10 years ago, almost.
We've been had great conversations around EB5, and especially in the context of people from the Gulf region, from Turkey, from Central Asia. We've been talking about this profile, like I call it the personas that are most suited for this kind of a program. Why don't we, since we talked about the what is EB5 and what and not, I think we should just look into the why, and then maybe followed by the who. The why is, I think, is where we can really give our listeners some light for them to start thinking around.
So the why has to do. The why has to do with the goal. The EB5 program is, advertised. It's shown as a permanent residency program, but at the end of the day, it really leads to a citizenship. As long as the investors are committed, not immediately, within a reasonable amount of time to come and live in the United States, as long as they live for 5 years, or at least half of that 5 years period looking back, they get citizenship, they get American citizenship. It is not a program for people who say, you know what, I'll just put this in, I'll get a green card through the EB5 program, I'll put it in my safe, and just in case one day I need it. It's not for those. It's for people who have made a genuine decision to come and live in the United States. Why is that so? Well, There are students who are educated in the United States. They're getting formidable theoretical knowledge through the schools, but they cannot work here with their F1 visa. Yeah, they can with the OPT, optional practical training, but that's very limited. And the H1B, which is the work visa, is now subject to lottery. The percentage is going down and down and down because the number of applicants for the H1B is rising. The quota has never changed. 65,000 for bachelors and 85,000 for masters. So we're talking about 10%, probability that they're going to get the H1. So it's great. And I can tell you there are quite a few countries, China and India and maybe even Vietnam at this point, at the top of the list, who have retrogression in many, many different categories. With the new law in the EB5, they can get processed quite. We've seen cases where our investors have gotten green cards within a year. They get the 526, they get the EB5 approved, let's say in 6 months, 9 months, within the year, they get their green card.
Remember, we used to do this mathematics, about, especially for those who send their children to the States, because as you know, one of the biggest, imports of US is education. United States universities are top of the world and best class in so many ways. So of course, education is a big thing for families who are considering this EB5 program. But then it's also a huge investment for children, especially if you have more than one child, to send to the States to study, and it's 4 years, and just tuition fees, multiply that by 4, plus accommodation, plus the flights, plus the living expenses. So it's a massive investment per child, and then the child then comes back to the same country and works for peanuts because of the economics of economic realities of that countries. In a sense, by just joining the need for sending your children for a good education, but also opening them a door to remain in the US and make US dollar salaries, at least for a period of time, I think is one of the biggest rationale for families opting for this program. Am I being correct?
100%. And we have to stress the fact that the quotas, the 10,000 quota is by visa. So investors, let's say it corresponds to 2,500 or 2,000 investors. But what I want to say here is that the whole family,
that's amazing.
Husband, wife, and all the children who are single, who are younger than 21, are eligible with one application. It's a huge benefit. So, in the example that you gave, if a person has, 2 or 3 kids, and U.S. education nowadays, be lucky if you can finish with $350,000, $400,000 per kid, you'd be lucky. So you multiply by 2, 3. I mean, the EB5 money that you're investing, you're going to get it back. Is already gone in tuition and board, and
if you think about from a return on investment point of view, for these kids to come back to countries like Turkey or Kazakhstan, or I don't know, so we know the salaries, so the return on the amortization of that investment is going to take, I think, a lifetime, if not more. They're going to have to pay for that investment till the retirement, if not more. So so this is why, okay, this is why I'm gonna now take you to the kind of profile that you think befits this program. Let's talk about that for those who are listening to us. Who is eligible and who would benefit from, who could benefit from this most?
So I'd like to touch upon the net worth, because it's kind of important in my opinion. It cannot possibly be your last penny. So people who are selling this real estate, that real estate, that's fine to raise the money if you have a lot of them, but just so that they're going to put together the 800,000 plus whatever lawyer fee, admin fee, and government filing fee. By the time you finish, we're talking about $900,000 here. This money is going to be their last penny. I wouldn't think that this EB5 is for them. So the typical profile, I would say, would be a family that has 3 or 4 times that at the minimum in their net worth. And I'm calling it net worth. It doesn't mean that they have this much money in the bank. Like they can have real estate, they can have a business, an asset. They can have a business that is generating very good money, and the PV of, future income of the business, that's also part of the network. So as long as the person has a comfortable living and is not going to be thinking about this $800,000 until they get it back, like God. So we say that. And in the other extreme, we touched about this as well. I mean, a family that has a net worth $50, $100 million or whatever, there could be other options that we could discuss for them.
Yeah.
EB5 doesn't have to be, regional center EB5 doesn't have to be, can be, but it doesn't have to be the
only way
so
forward.
we're talking about the sweet spot of maybe $3 million to $10, $15 million kind of net worth type of people. And they have different incentives. They could be coming from countries where there is a tremendous pushback there. Let's be honest, that they don't like the regime and they want a better life. They want a different life. So it could be people coming from those people who middle-aged people who want to move to United States and get a better, job mobility type of situation. But most of the applicants that we're seeing, at least now, is the students who are actually studying here or plan to study here. They want to stay. Their parents are gifting the money to them. In other words, the investor, if they are already above 21, they have to go by themselves. As we said, family, the kids have to be
below the age of 21, and they shouldn't be married, right?
Should be single, yes. So once they are above 21, they have to go by themselves. Most of the people who are 21 or 22 years old don't have $1 million in the bank, so they get the money gifted by their parents. And the other category, we should mention it here, are people who are here with H-1B visas, principally Indian nationals, who don't have any hope of getting EB2, EB3, which is the other kind of employment-based way of getting a green card. There is retrogression and other jargon, which means that there's no visa availability. In other words, you can get your application approved, but once you're approved, now you need to apply for a visa, but there's no visa availability. The quotas are just,
I see what.
Those people who are in the United States and want to stay in the United States, but they are here with a temporary non-immigrant visa, such as F1 or H1B or others, they are great candidates. I want to mention about the Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, which passed about 3 years ago, in March of 2022. And it gave a tremendous benefit, which we didn't have when we started this together, like we've been doing it, in the 2017, 18, 19, before the RIA. You didn't have this benefit of being in the United States with a non-immigrant visa, and once we apply to EB5, being able to not only apply to EB5, but before the EB5 is approved, being able to apply for the green card simultaneously. Even today, if you apply from Turkey, the Gulf, wherever, or from overseas, you will not get this benefit. This benefit is granted only to people who are in the United States. I must underline more than 90 days. They've been here at least 90 days with a non-immigrant visa. Those are the ones who are eligible to apply for the EB5, but at the same time, with that application, they can apply for adjustment of status, work permit, and travel permit. Why is this important? It's important because the work permit and travel permit can come in within months. So imagine you're a student, you've done the OPT, your optional practical training. It's 1 year for
1 year after graduation, right?
Yes, science, technology, engineering, math. So any one of these categories, you get 1 year, and 2 years after that, an extension. All the other areas like arts, you get 1 year. So either way, let's say that your OPT is about to expire or expired. Now, you have no choice. Before this happens, a few months before this happens, it will be your last chance to apply for the EB5. And once your work permit is granted, then you're free to work anywhere you want. And while the EB5, the application as well, the adjustment status is pending. So even though that is pending, you can work. And then once you get your travel permit, you can travel back and forth. So you really get the benefits of the green card with being able to work of course, live here as long as you want and travel back and forth way before.
That's
So
amazing.
you're asking about who are sort of the typical investors nowadays. Because of the new law, people here with non-immigrant visas have become, no question about it, the majority of the investors.
I see. Okay. Fantastic. So you're not going to believe this, but I have prepared some questions for you. The questions that I've been collecting from my network, I have to say. So if let's just do this sort of rapid fire session with you and bust some myths and answer what investors really want to know. So one of the questions that I received was, can I invest through a foreign company I own?
The answer is absolutely yes. I get that question, actually the reverse of that question. I usually get, if I made the money in the United States, people have this impression that since the law passed, now I would say 35 years ago, in 1990, and the whole incentive was to bring money inside the country. So people have naturally this question, the reverse of your question, that saying, like, what if the money is made here? I have an E2 visa. I have a small little business. I've been running it for 10 years, and I have, saved a lot of money. Now I got the $1 million, American money, taxes paid, clean. I can show you every little detail about this money. Can I use this money for EB5? The answer is absolutely yes, right? Absolutely. It doesn't have to be. So the foreign company that you own, of course you can. Now, if the question is whether the foreign company can invest in my behalf, the answer, unfortunately, is no. So that question also comes.
That's the distinction. Okay.
Yeah, that question also comes. In other words, the money is the money usable? Absolutely, as long as the money comes to their person. So what you cannot do is a company invest the money, because the money has to be yours. Like, in other words, just let's think about it. The money, you have to be able to touch the money before it goes to USCIS. So how can you touch the money? You can touch the money by somebody gifting you the money. It touches you and then you give it. You can touch the money by taking a loan. You take a loan, you touch the money, you send it. So if you're not touching the money at all, meaning the money from the bank is going directly, in other words, when I say touching, I mean it has to come to your person.
It has
The
to
bank
have
is
a
going to wire the
connection to
money
you.
from one bank
I
to
see
the other.
what you're trying to say. It has to have a connection to you directly in person, because I mean, having lived in the UK for many years, I know that if you are you could be a director and owner of a company, but that doesn't mean it is you. The company has an entity of its own. So
Right.
I guess the American government wants the money to belong to you as a person, not as a company.
Give it to you as a dividend. The
Yeah.
company can give you, and that will have tax consequences, I understand. So that is why people are sometimes reluctant to get it as a dividend, because before,
Because you pay corporation tax and personal tax, income tax.
exactly, double taxation, 100%. That's the point. But then they can take a loan from the company. So if that the dividend is going to create a tax situation, they can take a loan, no problem.
There's all these beautiful little formulas around things, and I love you for that. You're full of ideas. Okay, so the next question is, do I need to move immediately? I get this a lot from people, because sometimes you make a decision, but the child or the children are still at high school. It's not quite the right time. You need that window. And people are kind of a little bit apprehensive around the sort of the moving date. What for that?
It's an amazing question. I will give an answer, and I will give the best answer I need to give. So the official answer, they have to consult with their immigration attorney, right? But then I can sort of whisper to you what the immigration attorney is going to say. The immigration attorney will go the conservative route and say, once you have the green card, the expectation is that you should spend 6 months out of the year in the United States.
Okay.
I agree that this scares people out. And in reality, in practice, I've been doing this, almost 10 years. What I see is that that's really not, even though that's probably written, in the law and everything else. So I'm not going to dispute that. But in reality, what is being enforced is that you shouldn't be out of United States more than 6 months. That's much more digestible, right? So as soon as they get the green card, instead of putting it into the safe, they should, first of all, the green card, technically speaking, is going to come in a U.S. address anyways. But the green card, when we say green card, if they are in a consulate, in an embassy. They're just going to get a stamp in their passport. So that is the green card. With that, once they have that, they should come to the United States. No, don't delay, because that basically is your ticket to come to the United States.
Yeah.
And in the United States, they should stay maybe, a few weeks, maybe a month, maybe have a residence. Be a rental, doesn't have to be, they don't have to buy anything. It can be a rental. I would say create some kind of a residence in the United States. Could be, in addition to that, a driving license, phone number. There are many things that you could do, utility bills and stuff like that.
Maybe open a
Bank account is great, yeah. So once you go back, do not be away for more than 6 months. Ideally, before the 5.5 months is come back here. So I think as long as there is traffic going back and forth and they're not away from the United States for, again, as I said, more than 6 months, they could do this for a few years. How many years, I cannot tell you. But because sooner or later, at the door, they're going to say, are you really, planning to live here, or are you just going to go back and forth, back and forth? This is not a tourist visa. This is meant to be, So I say what I think I told you in the beginning, as long as the people have the intention to be moving to the United States, this is the right approach for them. And the government is not expecting them to just pack up and, sell the business and, come to the United States the moment that the green card comes about. But before the green card comes, they should start doing some planning. And once the green card comes, continue on that planning. And within the few years, they can, they should make.
And on to the next question, if I may. What is the biggest risk? Because of course, it's at the end of the day, we know that, you're going to get the money back. I mean, in an ideal world, if the project is right, it's the right project. But people are still apprehensive because it's quite a big lump sum. And as you know, it's not just limited to the EB5 investment. There's also the lawyer's fees. There's the fee of moving your family, your entire livelihood to the States. So people want to know around the risk elements of EB5. And I know the answer to that, but I want you to say it.
What's that?
I know the answer to that.
Yeah.
The biggest risk.
No. I mean, the biggest risk is maybe this is what you're implying, that you know the answer. The biggest risk is to be involved with the wrong people, the wrong projects, and the wrong
projects.
the wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you do your research, you take your time, you don't rush. You start early. You'll be fine. So, what can go wrong? Let's go on through the list. Your source of funds can go wrong. Why? Because you insist, against your good lawyer's advice, your good broker's advice. You insist, my source of funds is solid. You ask, why is your source of funds solid? Because my money is in the bank. You have no idea how many times I've heard this. They go, what are you talking about? My money has been in the bank for 5 years. Well, the thing is, that's not the criteria that USCIS is looking for. The fact that your money has been in the bank for 5 years, it could be a day in the bank and still be better than the money that is in the bank.
Bad money,
because the length that the money has been in the bank is not a criteria. As I said, it could be a day. The question is, what happened? Where did this money come from? So we need to be able to go as back as possible. Now, there are some court cases that maybe we covered today, maybe we cover in a different session, that have really lightened this burden. And just about in every one of these lawsuits where USCIS denied the application and the lawyers went in and argued that it was wrongly denied, they won. So USCIS is, compared with years ago, are much more accommodative now on the source of funds. But nobody's taking risk, and I don't think it should be you should take risk. So I think the biggest risk is a denial because of source of funds. And the projects will come up with the EB5, by the way, jargon is 526. So when you say 526 guarantee, it means basically EB5 rejection guarantee. Projects come with EB5 rejection guarantee, but the fine line, the fine print is that they come with that guarantee as long as the reason for the rejection is project related, which is almost never will happen with bulge bracket firms and everything else. 99% of the rejections will come because of source of funds. So, and I'm not talking about fraud and everything. I mean, none of our investors are arm dealers or whatever. So our investors are making money in legitimate way, but somehow they couldn't figure out how to do the source of funds. So take your time on the source of funds so that you won't have this issue. On the project side, as I said, work with people who know what they're doing. Don't go into Google and find some project and say, this looks good. It's returning 4%, 5%, 10%. So I'm just going to put my money in. It would be a disaster if you did that. Thank God not so many people do that anymore. What else can go wrong? Oh, by the way, I mean, let me just, even if you get a denial because of source of funds, and now, you're not going to get the green card, the money is still secure. You just have to wait in most of the projects until the tenor and maybe extensions. We do have a few projects, not a lot, a few projects who will return the money almost instantaneously if you get a denial because of source of funds. It's not standard in the market. Most projects will only give you money with the project-related denials. But there are, if this is a major concern of the investor, we can address that.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to because I'm kind of doing this program, this podcast for not just for the Turkish audiences, but also for the GCC and also for the CIS. So what is the timeline we're looking for, especially around those three geographic regions in terms of processing timelines?
Yeah, processing times is pretty good. There is no retrogression in these areas.
Okay.
They have no, the applicants are way below the quotas, the 700 visas that we're talking about, which, let's say corresponds to 200, 300 investors per year from any one of the countries you mentioned. We don't get that many investors. So because of that, there is nothing to worry about. But those people who do want, faster processing, the new law, the RIA of 2022, does accommodate faster processing, speedier processing for rural projects.
Okay.
And I want to, just take a moment to explain what rural means. Rural doesn't mean that, you have cows and horses and chickens that are floating around like a farm. That's not what rural means in immigration language. Rural just means that the population in the area is less than 20,000. So statistical area is less than 20,000. They're very affluent. You have hotels here at the peak season. They go for $10,000 a night.
Oh my God.
You're talking about people who have residences in these hotels, adjacent to the hotel, that are worth 30, 40, $50 million, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos that are worth some crazy amount. So we're not talking about these rural projects, very solid.
Okay, so I want to talk about the process overview a little bit, the journey in like 5 steps, whatever, or however many steps there are in this journey. So how let's say I made up my mind, I have the money, and then what should I expect? The sort of the entire process. Can you walk us through that briefly?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I almost simultaneously, I would say, the investor should be working with an immigration attorney and a broker-dealer. These two go hand in hand. The immigration attorney, as soon as they are engaged, they're going to share with a questionnaire on the source of funds, which is really the main topic here for the immigration attorney. And with the broker-dealer, they're going to be looking at all the different project alternatives. Project selection could take between, I would say, within a month. Because what we do is we give maybe even 10, I would say, like 8 to 10 different projects in a spreadsheet. So in one session, we go through all of them. And then the investor, looks at them, analyzes them, and then picks maybe 2 or 3, sort of finalists. Then we like to invite the regional center to a Zoom conversation, just like this Zoom conversation, where the investor can ask any, detailed questions that we might not have covered in the, overall sort of overview presentation. And we give a chance to the regional center to, explain whatever, differentiates their project and others. And then we get together with the investor after all of those presentations one more time, and we pick a project. So, but while we're doing this work with the investor, the immigration attorney is doing parallel work with a source of funds. So typically we finish the work about the same time, and then they file. Really, they file their what's called 520. In a regional center, we're calling 526E. If they were doing direct, it would be 526. So they file this form. If they are in the United States with a non-immigrant visa, as we mentioned before, they will do the other three, meaning adjustment of status, work permit, and travel permit simultaneously. If they are not, they're going to wait for the 520 to be adjudicated. How long does it take? Again, the rural project's a little faster. The urban TEAs maybe a few months more, but within the year, they're going to get an answer. At least that's our experience now. And then if they are here in the United States, then the adjustment of status will essentially be almost the same time. If they're overseas, they'll have to go to embassy or consulate, wherever they are, and they need appointment. Some places, grant appointments quickly. Some places, the appointment, there is a little bit of a backlog. I've seen people who live in one country that will get, sometimes appointment in another country. With this, I've seen this. As long as they have, ability to travel to that other country to speed up the process. And once they have the green card, that's called the conditional green card. The conditional green card period is 2 years. So they have to hold that conditional green card for 2 years. And as we mentioned before, within those 2 years, they shouldn't be away from the United States for a long time. To recap what we said before, ideally, they should be here every year, at least 6 months. If they can't do that, then they shouldn't be away from the United States for more than 6 months. Sort of like we talked about these two alternatives. And once the 2 year is finished, 90 days before, they have the ability to now apply for what we call the permanent green card, the 10-year green card, by filing this form called 829. Now, the old school used to be that once you file this 829, as long as your private placement investment, the investment, whatever investment you made, allowed you, the tenor plus extensions have been fulfilled, then you were eligible to get your money back, the capital back. Now, with the RIA, with the Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, the definition has been improved in favor of the investor tremendously. Okay. Now, maybe we can touch, a minute, if you don't mind, on the dispute between the government view on this benefit, this improvement, and IIUSA, which is sort of the industry advocate, as to what they think it should be or that the intent is, right? We wrote a paper on this. It's actually in the website right now. Your listeners can actually go into our
we'll put the link.
News section. They will see the article. It's fresh off the press about this dispute about IIUSA and USCIS. So USCIS, surprisingly, are interpreting the government in a very, very favorably for the investor, very unheard of. Right? Typically, they are very conservative, or the lawyers sue USCIS on source of funds and all of that, and they're always, seemingly, it seems to me that they're always on the other side of the investors. Here, they're really on the investor side, if I can say that, But the regional centers have also their point. I mean, we wrote an article. It's pretty neutral. Your readers, your listeners, when they read it, they'll see that we don't really taking a side on this dispute. So the other side, basically, one side says that as long as the regional center who has access to this money has lent it to the project and the project has used it for 2 years and created the jobs for 10 years, then they can give
for
money.
10 people, right?
Minimum 10 people. The employment requirement has been fulfilled, and the developer or whomever is using the money has used the money for at least 2 years. As long as these two constraints have been fulfilled, from the immigration standpoint, the money can be given back. The regional centers, through IIUSA, are arguing that this is too short. We cannot give the money in 2 years. USCIS has never said that you have to give the money in 2 years. All they are saying is, if you give the money in 2 years, the person will not lose the immigration right. So the regional centers want USCIS to impose that the investors should not be able to get the money back for less than the number 5 is nowhere in the law. There's no such thing. There's no 4. There's no 3. the law says very clearly too. The law says the investor should have the money at risk for 2 years. That's all. It's a one-liner. And one-liner. So USCIS took it literally and said,
they have a fair point. Excuse me, because otherwise it's like, from the sound of it, it's like they want to use cheap money for longer. I understand that's the cost of financing coming down every year.
Right. Obviously, they cannot say
Am I
that.
reading
No,
this
no, no,
right?
no. You're very right. And obviously they can't say that because that even though that might be the implied reason, they have a more acceptable excuse. Basically, they are saying that we want to keep the bad actors out of the scene because people who cannot otherwise collect this money, let's say they don't work with us and they go into the internet and they put a project, we give money in 2 years, right? Because USCIS says they can. So we give money in 2 years. Naturally, investors are going to say, wow, I can invest my money. In 2 years, I can get it back. I want this project. Now, if they don't do enough due diligence, it's possible, not that it will be, but it's possible that these projects are more risky than the projects that are using the money for 5 years and doing stabilization. There's a more sort of traditional projects. It's possible. So what they're saying is that we want to keep the bad actors out of the scene because even though, yes, we will not give the money in less than 5 years, maybe 6, 7 years, in fact, and that's fine. But because others are going to be collecting EB5 money and potentially many people are going to lose money because of these bad projects, it could go into the media, right? The media is going to say, EB5 is risky. Now, argue against a Wall Street Journal article or a New York Times article that says EB5 is risky, right? Now, all of a sudden, the whole industry got tainted. Why? Because USCIS allowed regional centers to give the money in 2 years. This is their point. But I can argue either side.
There's always two sides to the story, and I know that, and I understand that.
I mentioned this because unlike the old school where you needed to wait for your immigration process to be able to get your money back, now at least there is a consensus. Let's look at the consensus. Even though there's a dispute, instead of focusing on the 2-year, 5-year, there's a consensus. The consensus is that the money back, the return of the money should be decoupled from the immigration process. It should be only how long this money has been in the hands of the developer. The immigration can take 10 years, can take 20.
And can the investors demand for their money back before the term, or is it kind of like in the agreement?
So, good question. So in order for, at the end of the day, for an investor to be able to be eligible to get the money back, and not lose the immigration right, obviously, right? So 2 conditions have to be fulfilled. One condition is what we've been discussing here, whether it's 2 years or 5 years, or from an immigration standpoint, when can they get the money back? So that is, tells you when the minimum number of years that the money has to be at risk so that they don't lose the immigration benefit. This does not mean that whatever number comes out, let's say the judge says 4 years, right? The judge says, you're saying 2 years, you're saying 5 years, you're both wrong. I'm going to rule 3.5 years. For example, let's meet in the middle. 2 plus 5 is 7, half is 3.5. I'm ruling 3.5 years. This does not mean that the investors who invest in EB5 are all going to get their money back in 3.5 years. No. It means that if the money is returned in less than that number of years, then you lose your immigration benefit. It doesn't mean that you're going to get your money back. The return of the money, when it's going to be, is dictated on the private placement document. The document that's
in that document. Okay.
That states that you're not essentially giving your money. I don't want to use word lending because you're not really lending. You're actually making an equity investment, but that's too technical right now. So you're making equity-like investment, and there is a tenor there that says we're going to keep your money for X number of years, let's say 5 years. And then we have the option, not you, we, meaning the developer has the option to extend it for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. So after all of that is depleted, then, you have the right to demand your money and hopefully get it. Because the money has to be at risk and it has to be equity-like, if you don't get the money back, as long as there is no fraud, you cannot sue. So, like, for example, there is no money to give you. Why there is no money to give it? Because the project went under. That can happen. Or, the
Finished on time. It's stalled.
whatever
It's
it is, the
delayed.
stabilization value it was not enough. So all of that, goes back to the due diligence. Of course, you have to know where you're putting your money. You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want a shortcut, I would say for the investors, make sure that you check the track record of the regional center, of the developer, the track record. So, don't put your money in somebody who just came into the market, testing the market. You see it on the wall that the reason why they're here is because they feel this is cheap money. I just want access. You have no idea, Aisha, how many calls I get. During
You're not jumping the gun. That was going to be my next question.
Okay.
No, seriously, now go ahead. Because my final question was going to be a smart advice. Because before we wrap up, what would be the most valuable piece of advice you would give to families who are considering EB5? And you've already answered, but maybe you want to add to that.
I definitely will add to that. I mean, just to finish that point, I mean, I think there are so many ways you could be lured. I don't know if that's the word, but you can be attracted to this type of stuff by the rate, by the tenor, all sorts of different things. I think, as I said, track record is a good one that you should look at. You should look at the skin in the game. We said, how much the developers incentives are aligned with yours, the regional center, the same thing, with the ratios that we'll look at. So you just take your time in, looking at the projects and whichever one you're going to pick, so that you don't say, in Turkish, we have this word keşke. And my mother used to say to me, never use this word keşke in, how do you translate? If only, in English.
If only.
Never use this word. Before you make a, move, make sure that if the move doesn't work out, you're not going to say if only. This is so take your time. So that's one thing I would say. And I guess my other advice is the other side of that same coin, really. Start early. Don't procrastinate with the stuff. I mean, that's another thing that I see. And unfortunately, it happened to so many people who procrastinated when it was 500 and now it's 800. And 2027, this is like some kind of a sunset that they're talking about for EB5. I don't think it's going to go away, but it's for sure going to go up. The amount is going to go up. It's going to jump digitally. The law says that we're going to look every 5 years what the inflation has been, and we're going to adjust it with the 5-year inflation. So in 2027, when it gets renewed, which I'm pretty sure it will be renewed at a different number, not 800 anymore. It's going to be higher. So don't procrastinate. If you have made the decision that this is the right thing for you, just act. I
mean, look, as you said, it's a mindset shift. It's if people look at this just a migration thing, it's a bit risky, in my opinion. It's like, if you want to invest in the future, and if you can have that mindset shift, then definitely it's something worth considering. And I'm going to add something to your list. I think I'm going to say partner with a licensed broker dealer. Your broker dealer is your I think the most important key in this equation, because everyone's capital deserves security, right? So working with the right partner, I think it's hugely important. Right. So shall we wrap up? We've been talking for an hour. I don't want to extend this, but I think we should do this more regularly, because there's still so much to cover. And if we do this more regularly, maybe we can gather more questions from our audiences, and we can do more sort of, tailor-made sessions for different sections within the EB5 ecosystem.
I agree. And I think we touched upon many, many different topics that can certainly be opened up.
Yeah, so why don't we do that? Maybe we can just, pick one every week, and then try to take questions maybe from the audiences. Maybe we'll do it live next time, and see if we can dig even deeper, because there's still so much to cover on this vast topic.
Thank you, Aisha. It's been great.
Yes, speak soon. And thank you all, whomever is listening, for joining us today. And if you'd like to assess your EB5 readiness or explore current project options, you know who to call. You can feel free to reach out to Marko directly. And we're here to help you make the informed, secure, and strategic choices for you and your family. And we'll see each other soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye now.